like to introduce our next speaker, Shaaron Alvares. Shaaron is a senior agile and DevOps transformation coach at T-Mobile. She's also an editor at InfoCube and a DevOps ambassador of the DevOps Institute. Her talk today is titled Inclusion and Technology, Everybody Belongs and Anybody Can Contribute. I'm really excited about Shaaron's presentation today because she is going to provide an overview of a few very practical inclusion practices. And one of these is conducting a team-inclusive collaboration self-check. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the presentation.
Hello, it's great to see you again, and welcome to this session, and welcome to my home in Seattle, Washington. I'm very excited to present a second talk about inclusion and belonging this time, considering that this year's theme is You Belong Here. It is definitely a very relevant and important topic. We're going to talk about how you can help accelerate innovation in your own organizations with inclusive practices. And as we go through the content, please share your feedback and ask your questions. I'd love to hear from you and from your experience. My name is Shaaron Alvares, and I work as an Agile and DevOps transformation coach at T-Mobile. I am also an editor at InfoQ and a DevOps advocate at the DevOps Institute. I am not an HR or D&I professional, but that's exactly the purpose of this talk. We all belong in inclusion, and anyone can and should influence the future of inclusion in technology. This is my son, by the way, when I received the gift from GitLab. First, we look at the research data to better understand the impact of diversity on innovation. Then we'll describe practices that you as an individual, team member, or manager can literally deploy right after this presentation to drive a greater sense of inclusion and belonging within your own organizations. First, let's get some definitions out of the way. Diversity here is not limited to race or culture. It includes various dimensions and intersectionality. In diversity, we include diversity of culture, thought, strength, age, gender, race, sexual orientation, identification, and many more. You probably heard the statement from Verna Myers, diversity is being invited to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. I like to challenge this statement and say that inclusion is being invited to design the party, not just dance at the party. So based on the last 10 years research, the benefits of diverse teams is absolutely irrefutable. We know that teams that operate in an inclusive environment outperform their peers by a staggering 80%. Organizations where men and women are equal in numbers and inclusion earn 41% more revenue, and cultures that are racially and cognitively diverse outperform non-diverse ones by 35%. And there are various reasons for that. Cognitively diverse teams are more likely to generate unexpected and out-of-the-box ideas. They are able to empathize better with various cultures, therefore develop product tailored to a diverse and global customer base, and they prevent bad product decisions. They also contribute to developing non-diverse teams because they challenge group thinking. In turn, a diverse workplace attract high performers, more diversity, and they foster a greater engagement and retention. So we just saw that the case for diverse team is no longer up for debate. Yet, we don't have to explain that tech is not diverse enough. The Dollar Report and the Accelerate book published global data in the last 3 years that showed that less than 25% of the DevOps workforce identifies as minority, and only 6% identifies as women. But great news, we have two major opportunities that we can seize now. The first one is the hiring horizon for the next decade, and the second is the millennial workforce. We know that the technology skill gap is estimated to cost the US economy $2.5 trillion over the next decade, and that 2.4 million jobs will be unfilled over the next decade as well. And those gaps impact negatively and directly productivity, customer service, innovation, and growth. And one way to meet this shortage and grow your talent pool is to actually hire a diverse workforce and cultivate inclusive teams. On the DevOps front, based on the 2019 Enterprise DevOps Skill Report by the DevOps Institute, we know that 37% of companies are currently actively hiring, and that 14% will be hiring in the next 12 months. The second key opportunity I mentioned is the millennials. Millennials are born between 1981 and 1996. They will represent 75% of the global workforce by 2025, which is really just around the corner. They fully recognize the relationship between cognitive diversity and innovation. And today we know that 83% of millennials are actively engaged at work when they see that their organization fosters an inclusive culture. And 47 of them, in fact, are actively looking for diversity and inclusion when sizing up potential employers. That's right. To attract millennials and diverse talents, we need to ensure that we have an inspirational, robust, and genuine diversity and inclusion strategy in place. Because 54% of women research a company's diversity and inclusion policies before accepting an offer. And 61% of women specifically investigate companies' leadership team before accepting an offer. Women want to be inspired, but they also want proof that their hard work will pay. I'd love to hear from your experience as well in your organization. So please post your feedback and questions. So there is no doubt diversity makes teams better. It makes organizations wealthier and more resilient. And it is the right human and societal thing to do. So why aren't companies more diverse and inclusive when the business case in favor of diversity and inclusion strengthens literally every year? So we say, and we just heard that diversity equals innovation and revenue. But does it really? Well, it actually doesn't work like that. Diversity in itself won't drive innovation. And that's the reason why hiring diversity in itself hasn't led to much progress in the last 15 years. The equation is a lot more complex than that. We need diverse teams, sure, but we also need teams' psychological safety, plus team inclusive collaboration, plus managers' inclusiveness, plus managers' practice of equity. And that leads to innovation and growth and revenue. We need all of these parameters to work together every day, and we can't remove any one of them. Teams need to feel included and safe before they can better collaborate. So we can see here that we have two key opportunities, one at the team level and one at the manager level. And this is validated, confirmed by recent research by Gartner, and I wrote a paper about it, and you have the link on the slide. Organizations face three challenges for actualizing inclusion at the workplace. First, we are unaware of how team interacts and how they perceive their current inclusion state. Daily interactions informs about inclusive behaviors, but we don't track this as at work. Then the second one is team leaders are not actively involved in fostering inclusive environment. And then inclusion is not embedded in everyday decisions. But we can't improve if we don't know where we are, right? So the first thing to do and the first practice I want to talk about is to simply assess how inclusive we are as a team. And to do this, I introduce the team inclusive collaboration self-check in various organizations I work with. Collaboration is really important, but in order to get the full benefits of diversity, collaboration needs to be inclusive. Collaboration, by the way, is the number one skills mentioned in the 2009 Enterprise DevOps Skill Report, and it's the number two skills meant to be mentioned right after agility in the Big Nine organization values identified by MIT and Glassdoor. So what is the team inclusive collaboration self-check? The objective of this game is to identify what it means for a team to be inclusive and develop a team personal roadmap to improve on their inclusive objectives. The activity is composed of 3 steps: gather data, generate insights, and decide what to do. In gather data, the team asks themselves what it means to them to be an inclusive and collaborative team. They collect this information on stickies or on an online board. It's really important to identify tactics and actionable behaviors that they can apply every day in their day-to-day work and interaction, not values or vague behaviors such as we matter or we listen. We listen is great, but who do we listen to and how do we listen? What does that look like and what's the outcome? For example, some of the best actionable behaviors I've seen and that you can see on this board are: don't interrupt when someone is speaking during a meeting. Let them finish. Ensure that they are understood by validating what they say, and then share your opinion. In step 2, generate insights, the team reviews the tactics collected, discuss and clarify these, combines them when they are duplicates. It's not an easy exercise to do, and it requires a lot of inclusive conversations and decision making, in fact. Then, because we're trying to develop a roadmap for becoming more inclusive, the team votes on the tactics they lack and that they want to prioritize and improve on. Here, I use the Ideas Board, an online tool that allows you to run this activity fully online from anywhere. Teams can't reasonably improve on 30 different inclusive behaviors at a time. So we ask them to pick the top 5 that they want to work on. And in decide what to do, the team decides how they want to work on these prioritized behaviors. And a practice I've implemented with few teams is to add the top 5 behaviors in a table and review it at the end of each sprint, generally every 2 weeks. During the retrospectives, the team discuss which behavior they do well and which one they need to focus on by voting with a thumbs up, thumbs down, or sideways. It's important to practice every day and hold everyone accountable because inclusion is not a one-time thing that happens once a year. It's a behavior that needs to be lived through daily interactions and decisions. We can also deep dive into some of these specific behaviors. And I work with teams who wanted to drive more accountability and results. They wanted to identify actions they can do to model the most voted on tactics and some of the most difficult tactics, in fact. So a team selected when we have strong reactions to someone, we check our assumptions and ask ourselves why. And to do this, They identified 3 questions that they would ask themselves when they faced this situation. The first question, could I be wrong in my perception of the situation? Then, what do I know about myself that may have triggered this reaction? And then, in what other ways could I have responded to this person or situation? This exercise created a shared understanding of what inclusion, belonging, and collaboration meant to everyone on the same team. It improved awareness of behaviors, and it made it really clear that actualizing inclusion is the responsibility of everybody on the team. It's not the responsibility of the manager only or of HR. It's really something they have to actualize. And it improved the team's trust and sense of psychological safety. So here I want, as best practices, I want to share some items that you can leverage if you want to run this activity. And I'm happy to help as well, by the way. We know that teams in a speak-up environment and culture are 3.5 times more likely to contribute their full innovative potential. For these reasons, allow your team to define the game and the inclusive behaviors they want to display. And becoming more aware and more inclusive won't happen overnight. But inclusive collaboration must be lived every day during every interactions and decisions. Then managers need to support the team's inclusive investments and dedicate time for it. Finally, make these practices open and transparent. Don't hesitate to share and post the great work on a shared repository. Most teams dynamic exercises are kept within the team's boundaries, but sharing this can actually inspire and benefit an entire organization. Now let's look at a few manager inclusive practices around including the team in the hiring decision process. With great power comes great inclusive delegation. So let's see how we can inclusively delegate that power. This is a real situation, by the way, I was part of a few years ago. 2 directors and a senior manager, all Caucasian, interviewed several technical project managers and scrum masters for a product and DevOps team. They landed on 2 candidates, but they were not sure about their final decision. One candidate was a Caucasian male, David, and the second candidate was Sangeeta, a woman from a diverse cultural background. The manager had a clear preference for David. When asked, they said that they liked him by roughly 65% and Sangeeta by 35%. So they asked me to interview both candidates to run the final interviews. And that's because at that time I was overseeing our Scrum Masters training and development. But instead of having me run the final interviews, I asked them to involve the team itself and allow them to facilitate a real-life event or agile ceremony with the candidates. We chose a backlog refinement because we wanted to include the product owner in the interview process. And the team identified the features they wanted to refine with both candidates. The result was eye-opening for the team, but also for the managers. You are certainly familiar with the saying, we recruit in our own image. Right after they interviewed both candidates, 100% of the team unanimously agreed that Sangeeta performed way better than David. There was no doubt among the team, especially in terms of hard skills. They spent just an hour and a half with each candidate, but based on Sangeeta's interaction with the entire team, they felt that she had always been on the team. The experience was a real success. Everyone on the team felt valued, trusted, and empowered to make an important decision that impacted them. And everyone bought into the hiring decision as well. The result was so impactful that the directors decided to roll out more team inclusive interview practices across the company. So let's look at other opportunities that managers can use to include their teams in hiring decisions and where their team can help remove hiring biases. Managers can include their teams in reviewing resumes or in drafting job descriptions. Managers can also partner with other managers in the organization to design an inclusive bar raiser program. Amazon has a bar raiser program, but not specifically dedicated to inclusion. An inclusion bar raiser program is an outside of the team interviewer and generally someone who is even outside of the group who is brought into the hiring process as a neutral third party that helps keep assumption and unconscious bias in check. And by bringing in somebody who is not associated with the team and the manager, we ensure that we hire for culture add and innovation and not for culture fit. And we are therefore more likely to make objective decisions and better long-term hiring decisions. So the third opportunity I want to talk about are the developer relation or advocate roles. DevOps advocates are really important influencers and disruptors. They contribute in designing the future of technology culture, and internally they navigate across a wide range of strategic stakeholders from product, DevOps, product marketing, managers, and leaders. And they have a unique relationship with users and communities. So we have an opportunity here to get them involved in designing an inclusive technology community through various activities. And again, here I'm really happy to collaborate with you and develop, a backlog of activities we can roll out in our organizations. So some advocates actually started, and here I'm sharing two great videos. One about where we can find diverse candidates. It's by Chloe Condon. She's a cloud advocate. Are you looking for candidates in all the wrong places? Really good talk. And one about how to develop inclusive communities by Cy Brand. Is also a developer advocate. His talk is about include lessons learned, creating an inclusive space in a decade-old community. A really great talk, by the way. So it requires a great deal, by the way, of courage to speak about inclusion at technology conferences and communities. So we need to support these as well, and we need more of them. As a conclusion and key takeaways, inclusion is real and it's not going away. Inclusive collaboration is critical to drive safety, innovation, and resilient cultures. Understanding and actualizing inclusion and belonging at the workplace is everybody's responsibility, and it needs to be embedded in everyday work, processes, and interactions. And managers play a really important role, as we saw, and they need to model the behaviors. So know each person on your team equally, invest harder in people that are different from you, and include your team in important decisions that impact them. Again, I am not an HR professional, and we saw that inclusion is no longer just HR's responsibility. We can all contribute from our seat, from where we are, and influence inclusion at work. And this is how you can help. Technology needs inclusive managers more than ever. Test these practices with your teams. Together, design and implement everyday inclusive practices, and I'm happy to work with you. Make safe and inclusive collaboration not just a priority, but the priority on your teams. Prioritize and embed inclusion in your hiring plans for the next 5 years. And spread the word. Talk about inclusion and safety at work, and talk about inclusion and belonging at conferences. When you run a search on YouTube for diversity and inclusion talks, you will see that 99.99% of them are mostly TED Talks and are delivered by women and minorities. That's not very diverse, is it? Very little to known diversity and inclusion talks are delivered by Caucasian male managers. Yet the vast majority of technology people managers are men and Caucasian. So here are 3 talks I wanted to share and that I highly recommend watching. Octavius Black talks about empathy in a hilarious manner, so great watch. Bridget and Clayton from Pivotal share the tactical practices that anyone can apply in their organizations. And John Skitt from Google delivered a 5-minute talk titled Listen, Amplify, Make Space, Learn, and Act in Collaboration. Beautiful. I'd be happy to help anyone, in fact, submit inclusion proposals at conferences. It's not that hard, and you can see, I'm not an HR professional, but it feels great to talk about these topics because they are really important. So please make inclusion a priority and come back next year at GitLab Commit to share your inclusive practices. All of you, not just women and minorities. We can win at this noble cause if women and diversity are no longer the only one who talk about it. Please reach out and I'd love to collaborate. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you in person next year. Stay safe.